One of the weaknesses of putting 35s on the Land Cruiser is that it's really hard on steering components, or that's what I hear. And I don't know how old the steering rack is on this car, but the steering is terrible. A bit vague, and it's my fault. I'm going to sort it out. With a bit of luck, it won't need a steering rack, and it'll just be the steering rack bushes. I got a set of Nolathane polyurethane bushings, so I'm going to put them onto the Land Cruiser, and this should be a job that I can do myself. I've got some new chisels, knock out the old steering rack bushes, and replace them with the polyurethane ones. But first of all, let me show you what's going on underneath. This is my steering rack on my 2003 Land Cruiser 100 series. I don't think this steering rack is original. I think this has been replaced at least once because it's quite clean and tidy, but those bushes are shot to pieces. Insert video here of all the play. And you can also see there's lots of play in the inner steering rack ends.
Oh yeah, because the rack barely moves when you're wiggling that.
So I'm going to have to replace those. But the first job is to try and get these rack bushings out. I'll need to get a straight spanner for the top here because it's a bit of a tight fit, but that's a 19mm. Just got my swan neck spanner to test the size, and that's pretty free already. I've just loosened it off. I've been hitting with the penetrating fluid for a couple of days. That came off with no effort at all, and the top bolt is not spinning when I spin this bottom one. 19mm spanner on the top, and give this a quick chooch. Okay, well, that came out very easy. Washer decided to roll away down the hill. Oh wow, that'll just come right out of there. So that's just enough room to get that past the alternate at the top here, so that comes out, piece of cake. One washer on the bottom, and a nut. And so now I just have to figure out, for the top part here, I'm going to try and lift the rack. So I'll undo both bolts, I'll try and lift the rack, and then see how much will fall out. As I'm a scientific fellow, and I'm making this up as I go along, I've used a crowbar to lift the rack, and I just put a little block of wood there, and that's going to let me show you my next gadget. This is an impact rated G-clamp. This is completely overkill, but the idea is, I mean, this was about £60, so it's driven by 27mm or an inch. I'll combine that with Mjolnir here. I bought this for two purposes. One is to do the steering rack bolts, and the other is for that diff mount. I can just get it to move, but it's in there ticked, and the top is probably going to be even harder, but same dealio. I need a way of levering it out, but there's not a lot of room. So there's the old half, and there's the new one. So this is why you have to knock out the metal insert. It's because the replacement part replaces the steel and the rubber bushing. We've used the steel bushing from the top half, and we've got this impact rated clamp, and in that hole is a, well, you probably can't see it, but there is a 22mm socket in the cup, because we took the shell and we compared our sockets to see if we could get a socket that matched the dimension. Now you can see that one's too thin, so we got a bigger one, and we decided on the 22mm. So that's up there now, and then we're going to just impact it gently out of there. With one finger. Alright, great. Right, that's a 19mm at the top and the bottom, which you'll need to remove, and then you use, I just used a hammer and a chisel and a variety of levers. That's a 4-pound hammer, and we've got a bunch of different chisels and things. Buy long ones, right? That's an 18-inch chisel, which allows you to poke it in places like through the inner track rod end and knock 7 bells, as we would say in Scotland, knock 7 bells out of it. Because there's a very small lip at the top. We actually used a tiny wood chisel, which is now dead. But to get under the very first lip here, you'll see there's 2 metal parts to it, this top part, and you knock on that and it just moves the rubber. You've got to get a chisel underneath this second metal layer, and that's the part that actually comes between the rack, where my thumb is, and this metal piece here, and you need a really tiny chisel to get in and start you off, and then you can get into the 18-inch bad boy. And there are two halves, as you can see here, two halves, top and bottom. You can knock them out separately, but all we've done is just try and deform them enough that they release from the rack itself. And then we used a 22mm socket or a long 22mm socket, and you pop it in the inside, and that pushes the other half through. And so you end up with a happy little arrangement like this that pops out of the top of your steering rack. And we used this impact rated clamp, although we didn't have to impact it, we just wound it on. Just be careful when you're putting it on places that you don't crush any pipes and that you don't fold any metal that you don't want to. So that's the hard part of the job. It took us 90 minutes to do the first one once we got our eye in, and this second one was somewhere between 15 and 20 minutes. And all we'll have to do now is put our high performance lubricant on the new bush or bushing, whatever we'll call it. What does the packet call it? A bushing kit. So we'll lube this bad boy up and then get it back in. One point, do not forget the steel washers, top and bottom, because they are what give it the height that matches the factory equipment. So get your steel washer top and bottom above the polyurethane or the rubber, whatever your bush is made of, because that'll help not destroy the rubber, and it also gets it to the right height for the rack. And then you can put your normal washer and nut on the bottom. That's now done. Everything is fastened up again underneath, and my under tray's back on. That took about 2.5 to 3 hours of learning and doing, but I could do it faster the next time round. So it's possible to do that by hand with fairly basic tools, and the steering play is now way better. See? Oh yeah, instant response. As soon as I turn the wheel, I have movement. It's still on 35s, you can still feel that the steering is worse with the big tyres, but that's now fixed the steering. I'm not normally a fan of poly bushing because it makes the ride much firmer, and that's not really what this car is about. But in this case, it's fixed the play in the steering rack. I'll still do the inner track rod ends because they've got play also, but at least now the rack is no longer being moved around by the larger wheels. So if you found this helpful, please do let me know. Let me know in the comments down below if you've got any questions about the process, and I'll try and help as best I can. Thanks everyone for watching and for all your comments on the previous videos. Stay safe, make good decisions if you can, and I'll see you in another video. Thanks everyone.